Welcome to another episode of Monster Monday from the Ready to Die channel. This series explores the design of a creature I have built for Pathfinder 2nd Edition. The stat block for this creature can be found over on the Monster Monday blog, as well as the Twitter and Discord, all of which are linked below. This week's monster holds a special place in my heart. It was the boss of the very first game I ran in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Now, it's your turn to torment your team with the terrifying, the terrific, the Puppeteer tree. This possessive plant has its roots in a tree created to serve as a living repository of knowledge, connecting with others to share in what they know, and, in turn, spread that to others. However, the first Puppeteer tree developed a sinister intent, a desire to control and dominate that it used to spread its seeds. Many of these seeds have grown into new Puppeteer trees that exhibit the same malevolence as their perfidious progenitor. This use and manipulation of others is the core design aspect of the Puppeteer tree, as well as the reasoning behind its name. Obviously, this creature has the plant trait, and I included the rare tag because in my setting, at the very least, there was only one initial tree, as far as my players knew. Despite its towering trunk, the Puppeteer tree's extreme ability score is its intelligence, relating to the fact that it is the creation of a wizard and has soaked up a vast array of knowledge. It still has a high strength, but only a moderate constitution, relying on its ability to control and wield others rather than its own personal toughness. It uses a low dexterity since it is mostly a tree stuck in the ground, but rounds out its mental scores with a moderate charisma and wisdom. Its perception is high based on this mental acuity, and it comes with low light vision and tremor sense through its connection to the earth. It has a sizable array of skills, mostly to demonstrate its intellect and the knowledge it has gathered, which is also the specific reasoning behind the 3 lore skills that it gets. The GMs can decide on what they want them to be. That being said, its high athletics is probably the skill that will make the most use of during a combat to wrap up its victims in its roots. There's a bit to get into for this sparky body borrower's defenses, though we'll start with his moderate armor class, as while the tree is motile, it's a large tree rooted in the earth, not exactly the most evasive of targets. It similarly has moderate hit points. My original design actually featured high hit points, but after the monster mash I gave it an ability that helps it defend itself and had to compensate with some lower hit points. Following its ability scores and more potent mental capabilities, the Puppeteer tree has an extreme bonus to its will save, giving me a nice break from the fort-focused foes, though it does have a moderate bonus for that particular save. This leaves its reflex save at a terrible bonus, fitting its dismal dexterity. The Puppeteer tree also has some resistances and weaknesses based on it being born of bark. You see these same sorts of resistances and weaknesses, particularly the axe vulnerability, on the arboreals of Pathfinder 2e. The Puppeteer tree isn't particularly focused on making attacks, but it does need to do them periodically to possess and puppeteer its prey. To that end, it has a root strike, which uses a moderate attack bonus that only deals moderate damage. Its reach resembles the tree's root, which also come with improved grab because the tree needs to do a lot of little things, so it has to have that action and compression where it can. It also has a ranged attack, able to hurl its fruits at a moderate bonus while only dealing low damage. However, these fruits are distilled knowledge created by the Puppeteer tree from its vast stores, which leads us into the forbidden knowledge feature. If the heroes are able to somehow befriend or enlist the aid of a Puppeteer tree, they can use these fruits to temporarily share in the knowledge that it possesses. However, when used offensively, the sudden influx of info is disorienting, leading to victims having to make a will save at a moderate DC or become briefly stupefied as they are overwhelmed by it all. Since this triggers off of every attack that the tree makes, it uses that slightly lower moderate DC, but does have a critical failure effect should the players roll super poorly. To discuss its other abilities, we have to start with its passive effect, Roots, which simply states that the Puppeteer tree can hold up to a total of 6 creatures in all of its roots. Once it has these victims tangled in the termination of its trunk, it can use Take Root, in which it will try to burrow its root into its victim. The poor unfortunate soul gets a fortitude save to resist this against a high DC, but the only thing this does is make the creature restrained until it escapes, meaning that the Puppeteer tree no longer has to spend actions to maintain its hold. This action gives way to the eponymous Puppeteer ability that only affects creatures restrained by Take Root. This has no initial effect, but the next time one of these creatures starts their turn, they have to make a will save against a high DC. Failing this will save in any capacity means that the tree can do just what its name suggests it's gonna do, and that is to take control of a player. This is a potentially big and dangerous swing, which is why it only gets the full suite of actions of a character that critically fails to save, which actually did happen in the Monster Mash. Otherwise, it is stunned 1 when the Puppeteer tree goes to use it. On a critical success, the hero manages to sever the connection with such force that it causes the Puppeteer tree to break contact. This is a single action ability to mesh with the rest of the tree's kit. You can take a single creature from fighting it to restrain it under its control by spending all 3 of its actions. But each of those actions requires certain things to go certain ways, balancing out the fact that the Puppeteer tree can potentially turn a 4v1 fight into a 3v2 in a single turn. I'm pretty happy with this design, but be sure to let me know what you think. Controlled can be a touchy subject when it comes to inflicting it on players. However, moving on, this leads us into the next ability. Incidentally, I adore interactivity, which is a reaction. Interposed Puppet is a defensive reaction that was the basis of the decision behind lowering its hit points. This is largely based on the shield block reaction, but rather than wasting an expensive shield that could break, the tree just uses one of its disposable puppets to soak up the attack. This fit my usual criteria of being an interesting reaction, but also really fit in with the kit and the entire theme of the creature, which is its use and control of others. That wraps up the basic and specialized toolkit of the Puppeteer tree, but given its creation by a wizard and design as a repository of knowledge, it also has a suite of sinister spells. It is focused on crippling and manipulating the minds of its enemies, making it easier for it to dominate them, but it does have some effects about learning and sharing the contents of minds, between Mind Probe, Share Lore, and Mind Reading. All of its spells use a DC and spell attack in between high and extreme, as it did kind of follow a spellcaster roadmap in its design, counting its abilities among its spell-like capabilities. But with that, from treetop to rioting roots, we have covered the Puppeteer tree. A perfidious possessor of people, this powerful plant persuades its potential prey prior to placing players in its palm, puppeting their personages. I'm a little biased, but I'm inclined to think that the Puppeteer tree serves well as a boss-style monster. In fact, the heroes might even encounter it already controlling somebody else, adding an extra body and potentially interesting dimension to the fight, especially if the heroes can devise some means of freeing the unfortunate figure. Let me know what you think of these creatures and what others you would like to see in a comment. If you want to see other monsters I've done, or even the stat blocks and other versions of this monster, check out the Monster Monday blog or Twitter, linked below. Thanks for watching, and have a monstrous Monday.